Alrighty, here we go again. Today we swapped out the 4-inch HX82 cover compressor wheel and backing plate to a 3.6-inch HC5A setup, and I wanted to do a comparison of the two. This is the horsepower, and unfortunately, there's a flag. The crosshairs are on the purple line here. This is the 3.6 turbo, and what you can't see is the actual torque numbers show up on my screen, and for some reason I can't get that to transfer over to the screen capture, so I'm just going to call it out. So right now we'll hit the peak numbers. So well, shoot, they cover up one another. Let's unpeak it. All right, so the 4-inch peaked at 2,908 foot-pounds at 1597 RPM. The 3.6 peaked out at 2,914 at 1602. These wiggles in here are just some anomalies, I think, in the data capturing. It could have been sucking some air to the water break. My tank was getting kind of low. But in all honesty, this is almost the same. And at least from 1900 and down, both turbos made pretty much the same amount of torque. Let's go ahead and let's look at the horsepower. Kind of the same story with the horsepower. So up here, I try to remember to call these numbers out since they're not showing up. Of course, when you come in at 2100, the 4-inch was making right at 1001. The 3.6-inch was making 994. You can see there's a little bit of gap between the two. The largest point, it's 976 versus 980. 10 horsepower. As you come down to 1900, and basically from 1900 all the way to 1500, they're pretty much the same. You can see they kind of swap the lead back and forth. Truth be told, it's pretty much the same. So let me move on down to I'm going to move down to pressures. Now this one's going to be a little bit busy, but I think it's important to let all this stuff be here. So my major complaint with the 4-inch setup was twofold. Actually, it was threefold. Number one, I felt like the low pressure turbo was putting out a little more boost than I wanted it to. It runs, you can see it's running right around the 30 pounds. It goes back and forth, 31, 32, right in that range. Overall boost in this. I'm sorry. No, wait a minute. Yeah, overall boost is this blue line right here, which is peaks out at 46. No, it doesn't peak at 46. It starts at around 46 at 2100, and 48, and then about 1900 it settles in about 50 pounds. And from my single turbo testing, I found that you don't need 50 pounds to make 1,000 horsepower with a cat. It just doesn't. It'll probably make it at 40 pounds. So that 50 pounds goes on until it peaks at 50.41. It's 1651. I gotta get rid of these numbers. I can't see. Come on. Dang nabbit. There we go. Okay, so they're off of here now. So you can see that when we move to the 3.6-inch wheel, we're now down at 49 pounds. We're down at Yeah, I mean, we're only lost about 2 pounds here. At 1900, we're 47. We're almost three pounds down, roughly. So it took a little bit off of it on the total boost. Drive pressure, I do like the 3.6 drops drive pressure all the way down. And once you get down here at 1800, you're looking at 48 pounds versus 49 pounds. So there's only 1 pound showing in there. So it looks like a lot, but it's really not much. But anyway, it is a little lower, and I like that. What I really like, though, is down here. We went from over 30 pounds all the way across. There's 31.6, there's 32.16, 32.17, and the going to the 3.6-inch compressor really dropped that down. We're at 24 pounds at 2,000. I think this is the peak, is at 27.28 at 1740. So I do like that we dropped pressure by going to the smaller compressor. What I don't like is it's going to be hard to see this, but what we're looking for is the blue line, which is boost, and the red line is drive pressure. They cross over at 50 pounds at 1830. Now the next combination is the 3.6. It crosses over at 1810. I like to see that crossover as high, not as high as possible, but higher up. But in all reality, like I mentioned in the last video, I drive from 15 to 1800. So as long as the crossover is around 1800, I don't really care whether it's 1830 or 1810, whatever. But it's just sweet to operate in this zone here where you're making 49 pounds of boost with 40.5 pounds of drive pressure, and then right here at 1500, 45.7 pounds of boost and 34 pounds. Man, that is making money right there. But it's interesting. You can see that the 3.6 and the 4-inch pretty much have the same spread of boosted drive pressure. I mean, it's a little bit better, but not much. I mean, we're not talking about more than a pound. So that's pretty interesting there. So we've seen that the horsepower was virtually the same. We had 995 peak horsepower versus 1,005, or actually 1,001. 5 horsepower is not really even worth worrying about. And so looking at this, you say, well, looks like the 3.6 is doing the job fine. Smaller compressor, probably spools up a little better, blah, blah, blah. Same power, lower pressures, all's well, right? Well, yeah, until we pull the next slide over, the next chart, graph, whatever you want to call it. And this is where things go south in a hurry. The 4-inch compressor setup peaked at 1,333 degrees, way up at 2,100. Like I said before, above normal work truck driving range, in my opinion, at least for my driving habits. We were down here, 1,314 degrees at 1,800. But for some reason, the 3.6 up here, we're at 1,384. So we have gone, was it 70 degrees? And that's a lot. 70 degrees is a lot when in the pyro. I mean, it looks like up here we're right at 1,400 degrees, and then down here we're at 1,323. So, I mean, we're looking at, on the upper end, we're looking at over 100 degrees. And even down in the working range, let's say like 1,700, we're looking at 1,301 versus 1,354. That's only 50 degrees, but that's still, it's it's enough to make a difference. 1304 versus 1351 at 1600, and then down at 1500 we're at 1303 with the 4-inch turbo, and 1347. That's as best as it gets, a 40 degree temperature spread. But I just gotta tell you, I don't like that. You know, I don't believe in having any bigger of a turbo than you need, and everything else looks really nice. But this, to me, would be a reason to not run the 3.6, but to go ahead and run the 4-inch. So there's the peaks. You can see them now that I clicked on it. 14.25 versus 1333. That's pretty big. And then, you know, down here, that's still just more than I'm comfortable with. It's close to 50 degrees. 50 degrees means a lot when you're on a hard pull, especially out here in the desert. So I suspect that this, if I drag this engine down to 1200, it's probably going to get a lot closer down at 1200, but that's just not good for it. I mean, we're talking about an engine that's putting out, let's see, at 1600, it's putting out 2900, over 2900 foot-pounds of torque. So you don't want to drag it down to 12. It's going to get worse. So, all right, I won't drag this video out, but basically just to summarize it, exhaust temps were 50 to 100 degrees higher with the 3.6 inch or 91.6 millimeter versus the 102 millimeter. The pressures were better. They're lower. I like lower pressures. Lower overall, lower for the low pressure. Lower back pressure, really like that. I really like how that back pressure came down, but the temperature didn't come down. So I'm a little bit befuddled. I'm going to think through this. I'll probably make some more changes. And then the final thing is power is basically the same. I mean, you get a couple extra horsepower on the upper RPM. So, all right, well, I'll get these two videos loaded up, and I guess some of you will see those on Wednesday morning. All right, y'all take care.